Welcome back to this week's edition of Freedom and Prosperity Radio. And I've worked in a lot of resort communities in my radio career, and I always still get that kind of tense feeling around a Memorial Day weekend as if the impending hordes are about to descend upon my home, whether it be in the Hamptons or Ocean City, Maryland. I never worked in Tidewater, though we have some great listeners in Tidewater. So it's with that in mind, we give somebody a break from worrying about how crowded the streets are in the Virginia Beach area. And Robert Dean is the chair of the Tidewater Libertarian Party. Robert, thank you for joining us this week. Happy Memorial Day weekend. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Well, it is a Memorial Day. I think it's a term or a name that's long been forgotten. It's all about just getting out and having fun, and
we forget.
They've forgotten about what it was all about, all the sacrifices of all the blood that was shed and lives lost, and for what reasons, and that's very unfortunate. But fortunately for the uneducated out there, they have radio shows such as Freedom Prosperity Radio.
Well, and you bring up a great point. It's completely tangential to why we wanted to have you on this week, but you bring up a great point, and it's something that's bothered me every time somebody gets a 3-day weekend in their name, and I said this when Martin Luther King Jr. weekend was created. I said, it is almost the death knell of anyone ever remembering you properly. Let's give you a 3-day weekend. I mean, it's gotten even worse with George Washington because we've just made President's Weekend, like Woodrow Wilson or Warren G. Harding deserves a weekend in his name. Never mind any of his contemporaries, but we've forgotten all of these things in just the enjoyment of a 3-day weekend. And you triggered me with that point because I rarely hear anyone point that out. But you're right, and to that end, understanding that we shouldn't be sending our young men and women off to war, especially nowadays with our all-volunteer army, without real good forethought as to what it is we're fighting for.
Well, of course, the original term was known as Decoration Day, and that goes all the way back to when to celebrate the lives lost during the Civil War by both the Union and Confederate soldiers. Yep. And then, of course, it became a day later on in the early 1900s to celebrate all American soldiers who died while serving in the military. And, of course, somewhere around the middle of 1960s, it was officially called Memorial Day. And a lot of cities do have, in fact, a celebration, parades and all that, and the military come out for at various war monuments. And unfortunately, that by the certain factions in this country, they're trying to destroy those symbols of those wars, not whether the symbols are right or wrong, but the fact that people died. And to whatever the cause was, and it was Civil War, Vietnam, Korea, and all the other battles that were not declared wars beyond World War I and II. And I would venture to say that the vast majority, and I'm going out and say 99.44% of the millennials out there probably have no idea of the difference between declared and undeclared wars.
No, not at this point, yeah. You're absolutely right. And here in our flagship city of Charlottesville, we're sort of center square for some of these memorials. But, I think if we start taking them down, and certainly we have one of the oldest municipal Vietnam War memorials in the country. It actually was erected first in 1966. That we're doomed to continue sort of repeating that history, and that's to our demise as well. Robert. So I appreciate your thoughts on that on this Memorial Day. I wanted to talk to you. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish up.
No, I was just going to say, you were in about a year or so ago, you were in the hotbed of a lot of this controversy in Charlottesville. I think it was overhyped by the left. I would say that they just took everything out of context. I think what was intended to be a peaceful event turned into a somewhat bloody event, and I think it just led off with a lot of bad information being put out to the general public. I think Charlottesville's a great place, of course. I don't know what Franklin and the rest of them would be thinking what happened there. And this movement now to tear down all the statues and replicas of anybody that had anything to do with the Civil War. I don't know what's going on anymore in this country. I really don't.
There's so much going on in the Tidewater area that I wanted to talk to you about as the chair of the Libertarian Party there. You must be watching some of this between Elaine Luria and the Scott Taylor campaign. So Scott Taylor comes out and says, I was exonerated. Now, people working for my campaign, not so much, but I didn't do anything wrong with the votes. And Elaine Luria has taken some shots at the military now, and certainly that's not a recipe for success in a military town like the Tidewater area. What the heck is going on?
Well, it's somewhat akin to the past president, ex-President Lincoln. I mean, not Lincoln, but Clinton, who said, I did not have sex with that woman, and I did not know about those petitions.
Right.
But, oh, yes, he had to have. And while he may say on the outset to the press that I feel exonerated, the buck stops with him, just like Harry Truman said. And I guess only Scott Taylor really knows the truth. And, of course, Sean Brown, the scapegoat, I believe now she's reported to prison. But on another unrelated item of she was convicted of duping the government out of money for children, and then she didn't spend the money on the children, spent it on herself and other things. So she was scapegoat on that one, and they did a pretty good job of it. So I think Scott's political career is probably over. Elaine Luria, hopefully that will come to an end. She's extremely liberal. She follows Chuck Schumer's lead and Nancy Pelosi and all the rest of the whack jobs in Congress right now. And, of course, a few of them also include the Republicans. But it's, as you know, Mr. Davis, it's the same bird, just two different wings, and that's what sets we libertarians apart from others. We just believe in the constitutional republic and try to preserve everything about it and all the tenets that are associated with it. We believe in all of the 10 Bill of Rights and everything that's in the Constitution. And for some reason, the Republicans just have lost grasp of it.
Well, I think you bring up a great point, and because it's just really slicing up the same pile and who gets which half. And I watched some of the behavior of the Republican Party of Virginia, and trust me in this, Robert, I'm closer friends with Democratic Party chairs than I have any relationship with Republican chairs, especially at the state level. They actually had me removed from their hotel in Cleveland in 2016 because I was interviewing members of the Virginia delegation without their permission. There is very little in the way of body politic in Virginia that I find to be more distasteful than the Republican Party of Virginia. And I'm a conservative, and I can only really hope to find any, because I'm not finding them in the Democratic Party and the Libertarians. I want to talk, and I want to get into some of the more local issues going on in the Tidewater area, because so often that's where the real money changers are in our temple. But real quick, again, on an esoteric question, what do we need in Virginia to get the Libertarian Party better ballot access? Is it this fulcrum of entry that you have to, the high bar you have to reach? I would be perfectly happy if just the Republican and Democratic Party lost their permanent ballot placement and had to get the same number of signatures the odd Libertarians would every year. What do we need to fix this from where you sit, Robert?
Well, it's the problem is the lack of a groundswell movement trying to change this wrong, and that's why in 1971 so many of the Republicans broke away from the Republican Party because of the way the direction was heading. They formed the Libertarian Party, and all this is an immense roadblock, aka the wall going across Texas, separating Mexico, and they're trying to make it insurmountable. and we have all these lawsuits and all the money we have to spend. You got to realize another thing very unique to the Libertarian Party. The Libertarian Party and all of its candidates will not take a single penny from the federal government in the way of campaign contributions like the Republicans and Democrats do.
Right.
So we're at a major disadvantage. I don't know what's going to change it. It all begins at the polls, and until we can get our message out with competent and qualified individuals that run for office, I don't know what it's going to take anymore. I really don't.
Well, we mentioned the Jefferson story of Pete Buttigieg, and I brought up Jefferson's lost passage from the usurpations and abuses section of the Declaration that deals with slavery. And I don't think Martin Luther King Jr. could have written a more eloquent rebuke of the business of slavery and the King's enrollment in it. And yet, even then, crony capitalism reared its ugly head, and the South Carolinians and North Carolinians said, well, we're not going to support this if you have that passage in there, because the business owners in my state are going to be up in arms. And we watch it now modern. The president has his immigration reform and nothing about E-Verify, which punishes those who support human trafficking in the way of cheap labor being coyoted across the border, because the Chamber of Commerce paid off some Republicans and said, get rid of it. The cronyism is really the problem, not racism in this country, Robert.
Well, you're absolutely right. And that cronyism, if it's on the Republican side, it deals with a lot of corporate welfare. On the Democrat side, it's handing out, shall we say, gifts of allegiance or a modern-day slavery, because they attempt to try to separate those who believe in a constitutional republic and those who believe that government owes you something, which, as you know, government owes you nothing except to protect your freedom and your right to go out and live as a human being without being bothered by government and that intrusion. And so when they give the Democrats, give their voters something free, that old adage, when you rob Peter to pay Paul, Paul never complains. And that's what's going on. They're just buying their allegiance, and the minorities who follow this, and whatever that minority means to you or your listening audience, when they follow them, it's like they're following their slave masters. And that's what it is. They want to keep you a slave to government handouts. And that tells me that they regard you as being inferior human beings, that you aren't able to make it on your own. That
Absolutely.
You have to have that granny government that's going to take care of you from womb to tomb. And that's what's bringing down this country and leading us into that horrible thing called socialism.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And remember, they all voted for Hitler, and they all voted for Lenin. Let me ask you this, and I see this happening. Our federal deficit is approaching $20 trillion, and some of it, I find, is in payoffs to local governments that become pass-throughs and bribery to the citizens, and in many cases, slush funds for local contractors. I was reading a piece you wrote on this in the Tidewater area. It was just an eloquent rebuke of how these pass-throughs become kind of disregarded once you get away from the Klieg lamps of Washington. Talk about what's going on that you've unearthed in the Tidewater area, Robert.
Well, just before I do, I just pulled up the U.S. debt clock. That's usdebtclock.org. And right now, as we're speaking, it's $22.3 trillion. It's
amazing.
$22.3 trillion. And if you go to that website, there's areas on you can also just click on your state, and everything comes up about it. Everything you want to know about debt in this country. But what's going on now is, as we had mentioned earlier about the socialism, is the crisis facing us is the destruction of capitalism and free enterprise. I happened to watch, I think it was last Thursday night, on Fox Business News, there was a debate between socialists and capitalists, and they had Herman Cain, and they had a bunch of incredible people on that show. But the young people who were supporting socialists, and this one communist happened to be, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he was touting how great socialism really is. And my question is, could you give me an example? Anybody, those folks, all the thousands that listen to your show right now, Joe, can they contact you and give an example of any country that has been successful, that has socialism as their form of government, and how it's uplifted everybody out of the muck and mire of this world, made them more successful, more healthy, everything else? Just one example.
No,
and Joe, you're a pretty smart guy. Can you think of one?
No, I
know
think
right off the hand, I figured the first one you were going to mention was Venezuela.
Well, yeah, they're such a great job. The food riots are very well organized down there, especially being the wealthiest South American nation in terms of natural resources. There is no excuse for it. I think that makes it worse. But even our cousins in Great Britain, when one of their most notable citizens has to have heart surgery and takes time off from his steel wheelchairs tour, or whatever the Rolling Stones are calling it, to have heart surgery in the United States, and is back on tour in a blink of an eye. I mean, he wouldn't have even gotten through the national health care system to get seen by a cardiologist at this point. Never mind be done and through rehab and back on tour.
Well, before we touch on the Green New Deal, which I know is near and dear to your heart,
yeah,
because you want to go. I don't know how many more years. It doesn't matter because we're all going to be gone in 12 years.
Yep.
According to the whack job Casio, but what the decline that's going on is decline in integrity, character, and trust in this government and elected representatives. I have never ever voted for a leader. I was in the Marine Corps, family of 5 Marines. My father was career Marines, and I lead myself. I don't vote for somebody to lead me. I vote for people to represent my best interests and listen to me once you get elected. But the problem is the corruption and the temptation of the almighty dollar is so great. They've lost their sense of right and wrong, and as evidenced by not only what's going on here in Virginia Beach, all over the Tidewater area, and all across Virginia, where you have economic development authorities.
Oh.
These were created, as you know, by the General Assembly, and they really need to either be very tight and tightened up, or they need to go away because they're direct competition with capitalism and free enterprise. They have an unfair advantage that it depends on how many people on your city council or boards of supervisors in your area. In Virginia Beach happens to be 11. So we have these development authorities that have 11 people named by representatives named by the city councils. And what they do, these projects will come into them issuing hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And the latest thing, of course, down in our area, they gave this venture called Bitcoin $500,000 just under a year ago, and they've already filed for Chapter 11.
Oh, gosh.
So nobody's talking about how and when are we going to get our money back. It's never the issue. And the standards we have just fly in the face of fair markets. Yes, we have free markets, but they're no longer fair when you have these authorities that protect your local elected officials, because when they go out and issue bond and debt, they're saying, well, it's off the books, but it's not off the books. If anything fails, the taxpayers will always be the ones that have to pay the bills.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, one of the key things is you've got now an unending supply of taxpayer money propping up one business. How is somebody supposed to compete with that in an open market if you're a regular guy?
Not only that, yeah. And on these grants that they get, that these companies supposedly have to perform, but we never see the end results after 2 or 3 years. Did they actually bring in a higher per capita income to that business sector? Did they hire the number of people that they said they would originally do? But more importantly, when they issue those loans or the money for these projects, they do it at a much lower rate because they're getting the AAA bond rating, whereas the private sector doesn't have that luxury. So if the Economic Development Authority just totally went away the way it used to be, we would have good, fair competition. And you would be taking risk with private venture capital and not taxpayer dollars. And that's the problem that's going on right now. And that's total accountability. And we have an audit going on right now with our Economic Development Authority. There hasn't been one done. I think it's 6 or 7 years. So they're going to find out what's going on. And we've had a couple of members, the staff, the executive director was recently charged, and he resigned. He was charged with malfeasance in office, and another one of his employees. Both are gone, but they're under a grand jury investigation right now of spending unauthorized expenditures of taxpayer dollars, trips to the Philippines and entertaining women, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, my God.
This is going on, and it's just wrong. And the problem is, on the way your localities are set up, your city councils are represented legally by the city attorney. Mm-hmm. But in fact, it should not be the city attorney. It should be the Commonwealth attorney in your locality that go after and prosecute. But you have such a incestuous relationship between the Commonwealth attorney, who is elected constitutional office, and the city councils and the city attorneys. And, of course, in our particular city, we have nearly 30 attorneys working for the city attorney.
Oh, gee.
It's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And we have a city manager who's making just under $280,000 a year.
Which I'm sure most of the average people in the Tidewater area make about that, right? That's about average?
Well, even more importantly, the Secretary of Defense makes $207,900, oversees all the military around the entire world, ships, planes, I don't care what it is, and he's making under $210,000 a year, while our city manager is making $280,000. Something is wrong with this picture.
But Robert Dean, who is the chair of the Libertarian Party of the Tidewater area, thank you so much for joining us this week. And moreover, thank you for your service in the Marine Corps. Hoorah! And you have a wonderful weekend. And I'm glad you reminded us at the beginning to remember all those who didn't come home in defense of what we still are supposedly calling liberty. And it may make us just a little bit more passionate about fighting for it.
And Joe, thank you very much for having me on. And the next time in Charlottesville, I'm going to ring you up, and perhaps we can get together for ready for this? A cup of Joe.
Oh no, not that. You know what? And we have a great Marine Corps League here in Charlottesville. I broadcast live from their birthday party every year, and they are some awesome folks. And we'll have to get together maybe at the local VFW or something.
All right, Joe, thank you, and you're a great American. Keep this message of freedom and prosperity alive on the airways.
And, Robert, what's the best place for people to find the Libertarian Party of Tidewater online?
TidewaterLP.com. That's TidewaterLP.com, or I'll give you my phone number, 757-287-8694. And my line's open from midnight, from 6 a.m. till midnight.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Robert. I don't know the last Republican that gave us their phone number, but I appreciate it, sir. You have a great day. And
all right, Joe, take care, my friend.
Bless you. Semper Fi. Bless you all for listening. And on this Memorial Day weekend, let's not forget those who fell. Until next week, for all of us here at the Virginia Institute for Public Policy, so long and thanks for all the fish.